To gain a deeper understanding of a foreign country, take a closer look at the lives of the local people. I arrived in Argentina 3 weeks ago, spending 1 week in Buenos Aires and 2 in Bariloche. I booked a room in a shared home in both destinations. My host in Buenos Aires was an older woman in her 60s who sometimes rented out her own bedroom and slept in her office next door for the extra income. My host in Bariloche was called Bruno. He was in his 30s, had a job in finance, but supplemented his income by renting out the 2 spare rooms in his house and a small trailer in the backyard. Luckily, Bariloche gets a lot of tourism, so he had a relatively steady stream of income. However, I could tell the revolving door of strangers through his home was wearing down his patience. While he maintained a facade of warmth, his smile seemed strained at the edges, hinting at a simmering frustration beneath the surface. It was clear the decision to rent out rooms in his home wasn't because he wanted the company. Bruno was building another house on his land. 2 construction workers would come in the morning, work for 2 hours, nap for 2 hours, then work some more and leave for the day. The new house was for his mother, whose second husband recently passed away. His 2 sons inherited the house, decided to sell it, and split the profits, so Bruno's mother needed a place to live. It was a big house with a view of the lake, and the price was $400,000. Bruno thought this was insanely high, but to me it sounded like a normal price for a lake house in the United States, maybe even a bargain. I wondered how Bruno felt about his mother living a few meters away. He could have let her live in one of the bedrooms upstairs instead of shouldering the expense of building a brand new house, but perhaps that would have been too close. Bruno told me Argentina had a new president who would hopefully make the economy better. My bedroom was on the ground floor of the cottage. A married couple from Buenos Aires stayed in the guest bedroom directly above mine. Olivia and Lorenzo were on vacation and driving through Patagonia. They had a son who didn't join them because he disliked hiking and preferred to spend summer on the beach with his grandparents. The couple met on a farm when they were younger and have been married for 6 years. Their son was 9 years old. I wondered if the pregnancy was an accident. The architects of this cottage forgot to include acoustics in the blueprints. The thinness of the walls and floorboards was unbelievable. It's too bad my Spanish was below average. It would have been the perfect opportunity to eavesdrop. I could hear every yawn, every sneeze, and whenever they had sex, which was every day, lasting around 15 to 20 minutes. Luckily, they never seemed to fight. I never once heard them have an argument. Lorenzo was a chef for 8 years and now worked as an analyst for an international company. I noticed he had a tattoo of a knife and sharpener on his left arm. Olivia loved American music. Among her favorites were Whitney Houston, Tina Turner, Nirvana, Prince, George Michael, and Michael Jackson. One night, Lorenzo made pizza on the grill in the backyard. I didn't know you could cook pizza on a grill. The handsome couple ate dinner next to the fire pit outside. I heard them clink wine glasses as they enjoyed Lorenzo's superb cooking while listening to the greatest hits of the 90s. Afterwards, they smoked hand-rolled cigarettes and had a video call with their son. Then they went upstairs and made love for 20 minutes, causing an earthquake in the rickety wooden cottage. Half of marriages end in divorce, but looking at Lorenzo and Olivia, I think they belonged to the other half. Then the happy couple left, and I was alone. My host often stayed with his girlfriend, and there were no other guests for the rest of my stay in Bariloche. There were 2 dogs and 2 cats on the property. I actually have a tiny fear of dogs. When I was 12, my cousin's German Shepherd dragged me along the sidewalk, leaving some scars on my hands and arms. Ever since that incident, I've been cautious with any animal bigger and stronger than me. At first, I was concerned about the 2 dogs, but quickly saw they were sweet animals who loved people. They'd often join me in the backyard while I read a book or did some writing. Animals truly are fantastic companions. I think I'll have one or two when I have a home of my own. I was in the middle of reading The Power of the Dog by Thomas Savage. The story explores the clash between traditional and unconventional masculinity. An older brother clings to a harsh definition of manhood and unleashes cruelty on a new arrival who challenges his ideals, leading to a confrontation. There was no actual dog in the book. The title came from a psalm, reading, "Dogs have surrounded me. A band of evil men has encircled me." It suggests the destructive nature of unchecked power and the importance of empathy and compassion. I lived in a peaceful residential area outside the main town of Bariloche. Every afternoon, I'd walk to the lake for my daily swim. Down the road from my house were 3 cottages built closely together. Then I realized they were connected. I wondered if they were occupied by the same family. It dawned on me that this was the first time I saw individual gardens in the past year of my travels through Latin America. Rose bushes were in full bloom, along with lavender, hydrangeas, and daisies. There were even cherry trees with tiny red fruit dangling from the branches like Christmas ornaments. Small hawks perched on fences. Ibises strolled across front lawns. Nearby was a fruit and vegetable store that overcharged me. I bought from them once and never went back. Next to it was a butcher shop that closed during the middle of the day and reopened in the early evening. Across the dusty, unpaved road was a coffee cart with a selection of baked goods. It also closed during the middle of the day and reopened in the early evening. Along the road to the lake, I saw some graffiti on the side of a bus station saying, "Meat is murder. Veganism is justice." I did not expect to see this in Argentina. Most lakegoers rarely made it waist-deep into the icy water. People usually sunbathed on their towels, chatted with friends while sipping mate. Once I saw a young man playing a small harp. I always went to the same secluded spot away from the main beach, where I'd take an exhilarating swim for 20 to 30 minutes, then dry off in the sun. Once a lifeguard yelled at me for swimming too far, saying if anything happened, I'd sink 100 meters to the bottom because this was freshwater and my corpse would not float. I thought to myself, yes, I know how drowning works, but didn't say anything. The annoyed lifeguard added, if I wanted to swim out further, I'd need a flotation device, which I hated. I asked where I could get one. He responded, that was my problem, and walked away. I wondered if there were indeed dead bodies at the bottom of this beautiful lake. I nearly missed my flight back to Buenos Aires. I thought it would be easy to call a car like I normally did, but it was 6 a.m. and I lived far from the city center. After 10 minutes of waiting, still no driver accepted. I decided to walk out to the main road to see if I could hitchhike. It was still dark out. My flight was at 7:50 a.m. I dragged my suitcase across the dirt road, hoping the wheels wouldn't jam on the rocks and pebbles. There was a man waiting at the bus stop once I reached the main road. I asked him what time the bus was arriving. He replied, it was a private bus that picked up workers only, not the usual public one. A car passed by. I waved frantically, but it didn't stop. The man started calling his friends to see if anyone could come drive me to the airport, but no one answered. I thought to myself, missing my flight wouldn't be the worst thing. My room was still available. A few more days of swimming in the lake and playing with the dogs didn't sound too bad. Of course, that meant I'd have to buy another flight when I was trying not to spend too much money, but I had enough saved up, so I could afford it. The man pointed to a car just pulling into the pharmacy nearby. I hurried over with my suitcase, trying to keep my panic under control. The man in the car was dropping off a woman at the pharmacy. Both looked to be in their 50s. I tapped on the man's window. His head jerked around in surprise. He rolled down his window and the woman turned to see what was going on. I was on the verge of tears as I told him in broken Spanish that I needed a ride to the airport and there were no taxis. He asked the woman if it was all right. I looked at her with desperation. She nodded and went inside the pharmacy. The kind-hearted man got out of the car and helped me put my suitcase into the trunk. I was still hyperventilating as we drove along the road. He told me to calm down. There was no traffic and he was driving quickly. The clock said 6:30 a.m. and I knew I'd make it. He asked if this was my first time in Argentina. I replied yes, and I was traveling alone. He nodded with sympathy. His name was Mariano. He was a boat mechanic and a Bariloche native. He drove his wife to work before dawn every day. Maybe she didn't know how to drive, or maybe he was a devoted and chivalrous husband. I noticed he waited until she was inside the pharmacy instead of driving away as soon as she stepped out of the car. Even though this was a safe neighborhood, the extra step and care spoke volumes. The sun was beginning to rise. Mariano asked where I learned Spanish. I replied, I've been traveling slowly through Latin America for the past year, so I picked up a few phrases and took some online classes. I didn't have much trouble understanding Spanish in Ecuador or Peru, but the Argentinian accent was more of a challenge. He laughed and said, the Chilean accent is even more difficult. We approached the town center. On one side of the street was a nightclub with 20 to 30 people smoking cigarettes and partying until dawn. On the other side were people on their morning run and walking their dogs. We got to the airport at 7 a.m. At first, Mariano wouldn't take my money, but I insisted twice, and he accepted. The economy in Argentina was difficult, and would remain so for the perceived future. I was honored to repay his kindness. We parted ways, and I boarded my flight back to Buenos Aires. Mariano's unexpected act of generosity reminded me, in a world that often feels vast and impersonal, there are sparks of compassion that ignite within a stranger's heart. You never know who you'll meet next in your travels. During my first week in Patagonia, I had an American housemate who was a former veteran and a professional artist who makes me a surprising proposal. Find out how it all unfolded in this video.